Hey, what's up, parents? Thanks for joining me for another Woods Youth update. Hey, there's one really important thing I want to talk about, but before we jump into that, there's just a few quick reminders. So just going to run through them. First, youth leadership is starting up at the end of the month. So if your student is interested, they just have 1 week left to register. All the info is on the Church Center app. You can get it there. Secondly, summer trip has been announced. We're going to South Dakota to go caving and rock climbing. And then we're going to end up in Kansas City at Bold Conference. The trip costs $995. Registration is happening right now, and the early bird price ends in just 4 weeks. And so you want to make sure you take advantage of that. Again, more info on the app. Thirdly, we are up to our elbows in donations with our Wild Game Dinner, our biggest fundraiser. So if you're interested in finding out how, you're a little late to the game, but there's still a couple weeks left to participate, raise money for your student. Or if you're wondering how to get involved as a parent, there's a sign up for you on the Church Center app. You can look at that and get plugged in and help us out. We would love. Thank you so much to so many of you who are already helping out. It has been awesome to see all that parent involvement, and that means the world to us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. After the Wild Game Dinner, which is February 3rd and 4th, that Sunday, the 5th, is our all-church prayer and baptism service. So I know there's some students interested in getting baptized. There's going to be more information. We'll put a link below. And then afterwards, we're going to have our usual Afterglow. It's going to be Uno night, kind of a staple for us. Chill, playing some cards. We'll have some great prizes. Going to be a lot of fun. Again, more info below. Okay, here's what I want to talk about, and we haven't done this too much. This is a little bit out of character for us, but I want to talk specifically for the next few minutes about the next series that we are doing in youth starting the first Wednesday in February. It's going to run 5 weeks. Many of you know in the time of February, we do a series called Purple. We'll talk about dating, relationships, sex, some of those things, but we are going to dive deeper than ever before. And we're doing that because your students are bombarded with this idea of a sexual ethic and what is right and what is wrong. And oftentimes that is being held as the standard for kind of cultural side that you're on. And oftentimes our kids are kind of left not sure what to believe and where to go. In addition, I have parent after parent after parent come up to me and say, hey, my student thinks they have an anti-biblical worldview. They're not describing what Christ is teaching, what the Bible's teaching. And so what do I do? The most important thing is we start a lot earlier than when they're in high school, but we're going to partner with you. We've got your back. You've probably been thinking, how do I have these conversations? And so we are going to walk with you through that. And so we're going to do that by using a resource called Christian Sexuality. It's brand new. It's just been put together, and it is a comprehensive resource that is designed just for teenagers. There's video teachings that we're going to be looking at each and every week, and it is going to take more time in teaching. And so during the month of February, it's going to be a mini late night. So we're not going to 9:30 and playing tons of games afterwards, but we're going to need a little bit more time. And instead of having our gender wars, guys versus girls competition on one night, we're just going to do a little bit each night for the month. That's right. So in February, doors and pickups at 9 o'clock if you can. Wait that long. If they need to leave earlier, they can. But we're asking for a 9 o'clock pickup on these weeks. I want to talk about what specifically each week we're talking about because you might want to know. All right. So in week 1, the very first week of February, we're simply talking about God's love story, how much he loves us. And we're talking about the authority of Scripture. And so we're not even talking about sexuality yet. We have to set a foundation, because if we just said, this is what God says, this is the rules, without understanding his love for us, it gives us this skewed understanding. Instead of understanding God wants us best for us, we think God's taking something from us. And so we're going to set that foundation. Every student should be there for that. There's no reason to miss. The second week, we're going to talk about shame and forgiveness. This is a tool that the enemy uses to make sure that these conversations don't happen, to make sure that these kind of conversations stay silent. So many teenagers come to leaders and myself and they say, I can't tell my parents because they were perfect. And I know many of you, and I know some of your stories, and I go, it's not my shared story to tell, but I know that we're not perfect, and you guys as parents are not perfect. But yet there seems to be a disconnect, and so many students live with shame, and they hide. That's the original sin. That's what Adam and Eve did in the garden, right? They sinned. They were afraid of God, so they left and then went away. And that's what so many kids are doing. They're afraid about what you're going to think or what you're going to say, and so they hide what's going on, and we just can't live in that kind of atmosphere. So that's week 2. Again, not even jumping into sexuality quite yet. Now in week 3, we're talking about sex and marriage, and we are talking about pornography and masturbation. So we are diving headfirst, cannonball into the deep end, into some conversations that are so vital and so important. Week 4, we're going to talk about transgender identity. We're going to do a series a night on LGBTQ questions and how do they relate to school principles and ideas and things that are in culture and opposing ideas that they might have that are contrary to the biblical narrative. And so we're going to set that up. And then we're going to close out week 5 with dating and relationships. And so I want you to understand that this is not just a series I want you to know about. I want you to come alongside with us, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Before I do that, let me just raise some objections that we might have. We've got a lot of 6th graders that's young, and so the kind of common thought is, why would we introduce our kids to this when we want to keep them innocent and keep them pure? And the fact of the matter is that every expert, every youth leader, and I've been doing this for a long time, suggests the sooner you can have these conversations, the better. And the sooner you can establish that baseline of biblical narrative and what we believe, the better. And so I understand. I have a 5th grader. I have I don't even know if Jax is 10 or 11. That's terrible. He's young. I've already started to have these conversations, and I plan to take my son one-on-one through these videos this year. And so I know that they're having conversations. He may not understand them all, but these ideas and concepts are coming up within his teammates and his classmates. And so I want to make sure that he's comfortable having those conversations with me. So it's absolutely appropriate for this age group. I can't tell you how many students say, my parents had no idea how young I was when I first saw this or knew about this. I told them I didn't because it was awkward, but the truth is, they are in the midst of what's going on. One of the things Julie and I committed to, I've been doing youth ministry for almost 20 years, and we've looked at each other and we say, we never want to be the parents that say, not my kid. We've just watched it too many times. We've watched parents pull their kid out and say, well, my kid doesn't need that. My kid's too good. And we have looked at each other and go, that's simply not true. And so we've committed to that, and I want to invite you to that. I know it's challenging. I know it's not easy to hear, but it's so important, all right? Some of the other things like, hey, you shouldn't talk about this in church. That's something that's separate. It's not separate. Jesus talked about sexuality. The New Testament talks about sexuality. The Old Testament talks about sexuality. And if we stay silent, then TikTok becomes louder, celebrities become louder, school policy becomes louder, and all these other influences. We already know Disney came out and said, this is part of our agenda, is to teach kids about sexuality. And so we cannot remain silent. And then third, some people are, why single this area out? There's lots of issues. There's lots of sin. There is, but dating, relationship, sex is powerful. It's a big part of being a human, and it can leave tremendous scars, but it can also be a tremendous blessing. And we want to set kids up for a future that has the right view of sex and dating and what God has for them. And so it's so very important that we jump into this. Now, like I said, this is not something I just want to tell you about that we're doing. I'm inviting you into this. It's going to take a little bit of work on your end. We have purchased for you the content as a parent. All right. And so it costs us a tremendous amount of money to buy this curriculum. We own it for 18 months, and I don't get to keep it. And so we are going to subscribe to as many accounts as needed for you to have this. All you're going to need to do is fill out the form that we'll have linked below to say, hey, I want to get access. I'm asking that we do one access and email per family just to keep our costs down. But when you get access, you're going to get the same videos we're watching on Wednesday night. You'll be able to watch. There's a supplemental video for leaders and volunteers that we'll watch that I think is good for you. There are parent guides to know, hey, this is what we talked about, and this is how you follow up with your student. There's a parenting guide on how to have these conversations, 7 best tips. There is a ton of supplemental videos, vlogs, podcasts, books that are available by the experts in this field, and we want to make you aware of that, because the truth of the matter is this is not just a teenage thing. This is for you as well. You're trying to figure out, how do I talk about this to my coworker, to my siblings and their kids, or people who think differently than me? And this is the best of the best content curated, put together to answer the questions that you all have. And so it's so important for you to be a part of this. We want you to journey with us, and we're so really excited. I want you to take just a preview right now while I have you of the content. So check this out.
It's easy to find a teacher to tell you what you want. And you gotta ask yourself, am I just trying to find someone to tell me what I want to hear, or do I really want truth, even if that truth leads me away from my own desires?
Questions about sex, sexuality, and gender, these have become the most pressing ethical questions facing the church today. And our youth especially, they're swimming in the deep end of these topics.
It's said that the more religious a family is, the less likely they are to talk about sex in the home.
Regardless of whether you identify as male, female, trans, non-binary, or anything else, we need to make sure that our ultimate identity is in Jesus.
Don't let your past mistakes define you or your future. Every day is a new chance, a new opportunity to make a choice to follow Jesus and live your life with sexual integrity.
So, hey, I know maybe you're a little nervous. I know it's a little bit awkward to have these conversations, but I hope you see this tool as a resource. I hope it's going to empower you. I hope you're ready to go. I read many of the books from the creators of this content, and I couldn't be more excited. They created this because I needed it as a youth pastor, our students need it, and you need it as parents. So I hope you take advantage. Don't forget to sign up using the link below to get access. And as you log off today, thank you so much for doing the hardest job in the world, raising your teenager. As you log off, may you passionately pursue God and relentlessly reveal Jesus to your teen.